Hello. How's everyone doing? Sorry, I should probably take that opening a bit more seriously than it is. But just the music always makes me think it's so ridiculous. It's hilarious. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to anyone who's tuning in. You're all very welcome. I'm on lockdown. I'm stuck here, as I'm sure most of you are. Not a forced lockdown, but self-isolation, just trying to look after myself. My son is supposed to be back with me tonight, which almost certainly isn't going to happen. I am back from some travel, some work in the UK yesterday, which, as it turns out, wasn't the best of ideas, but had to be done. And so now just trying to minimize the risk of spreading anything, if by any chance I happen to pick anything up, or who knows what's going on. We're just taking each day as it comes, aren't we? So this is live on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. You're all very welcome. We're going to be chatting through some of the stories that are happening around coronavirus, around COVID-19. I'm sure many of you are already sick of this, and if you are totally sick of coronavirus, then I don't expect you to watch. Why would you? Why would you put yourself through this if it's making you anxious and making you stressed out? But we're trying to not be so stressed out and anxious. Today we're going to be going through a few different areas, not just kind of talking about what's going on and having a bit of a whinge and a bit of self-therapy, group therapy. But let's also look at some of the free resources that are available. Talk a little bit about working remotely, as lots of people have been doing that for ages already and have survived, and just seeing what else is coming up that we can do. If you are stuck at home, if you're working at home for the next 2 or 3 weeks or even longer, or if perhaps you're in, maybe you're in denial, like certain parts of the world seem to be really in denial. So let's talk through it. So basically how this works, if you haven't tuned into one of my live broadcasts before, this is all live. You can comment, you can reply on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, I just said that, on Facebook, on whatever is there. You can reply on any of it, and I will get the comments and we can talk through them, we can chat through them. I'm happy to hear of any resources or any tips or any thoughts anyone has. I will do my best to share them. Or if you actually want to come on, you'll see a link in most of the platforms, or message me if you can't find it. A link if you want to actually come on, join the video, me and you can have a chat. It'll be live streamed. Again, if you want to share some thoughts, if you have some strong opinions, if you disagree with anything I say, or if you want to point people in the right direction of any resources that you think is going to be helpful over these coming weeks, then please do feel free to follow that link. You'll come into a waiting room and then I'll let you in and we'll have a little chat. Before I kick it out. So what's happening? So just to spot checks where we are, a lot is being cancelled. So most organizations are letting their staff work from home. If you're not letting your staff work from home, you are insane and you need to be doing this. You need to at least give them the option of working from home. Most events have been cancelled. We've seen a lot of the big organizations cancel their events. What's just happened? NTEN has just been cancelled. I've just received cancellation of a few events that I was scheduled to speak at. A lot of charities are cancelling their own fundraising events. The London Marathon has been cancelled, or at least postponed. The Women's Mini Marathon in Ireland, which is one of our biggest fundraising events in the year, that has been cancelled. Lots of these things have been cancelled. Do you know what hasn't been cancelled? I noticed on Twitter this morning, is the Institute of Fundraising's digital event has not been cancelled, which is fucking insane. It's crazy. I don't want to cast aspersions on people, but I don't think the UK is taking this seriously enough. Yeah, I'm all for not for panicking, not for making rash decisions and stuff. But we need to be taking this seriously, and if we don't need to be doing stuff, we don't need to be doing it. And so already this morning I saw the fact that the IOF digital is going ahead, and actually one person who also noticed this and we were messaging is with me now, Beata Sorum. I'm going to bring into here. Hello, Beata.
Hi, Simon.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Well, it's all a bit of a weird situation these days, but hanging on.
It's crazy. Where are you? You're in Oslo?
Yes.
Okay.
Home
and
office.
what's the vibe like over there? What's the Norwegian vibe? Because you guys are pretty good at stuff.
Yeah, I think everyone's just feeling it's unreal. We were sort of expecting swine flu level of measures being taken, but this is just beyond anything anyone's ever experienced before, and it just happened so quickly. I think we're all sort of suffering a bit of whiplash and not really knowing where this is going to go. Just the uncertainty, I think, is what affects people the most.
Yeah. Even like Harrison's mom was talking about like Tuesday, and I was like, there's just no point in even planning 2 days in advance or even 1 day in advance, just because things are changing so quickly. Like I flew to England last Thursday for an event, and while I was on the flight, all the schools got shut down and everything, and then straight away I was just looking to see how to deal with that and when I could fly back. It's just moving so quickly.
Yeah, same here. Like the last time we called it Tuesday, we basically had, business as usual. It was a normal world, just washing your hands slightly more often, sort of complaining of dry hands, which, we go back to that world, please.
Yeah, it was mad. And this IOF digital event, I'm a fan of IOF, and I'd love to go to the IOF digital event. But what are they doing? Why is this, of all events, a digital event? Why is this going ahead?
I don't know. And what I find the weirdest is, so I realize the government advice in the UK is different. So I understand why they might want to trust that and go ahead. Mm-hmm. But at least make sure that your event can sort of do social distancing. Don't put people at crowded group tables. Make sure that you have that sort of space for people to at least do social distancing. I don't understand why that isn't happening.
Yeah, because there's photos coming up on social media, and you can see people are really sitting really close together. Like it just is like a normal conference. It's like for many people in the UK, it just seems to be business as usual.
Yeah, that's what they've been told to do by the government, I guess.
Yeah,
the herd immunity approach, which no one else is taking, and hasn't really worked out well for Italy.
No. And I feel like like we as a sector, we should always be a little bit ahead of what the guidelines are. Our whole sector exists because the government is not doing things right, or and not taking the measures that they should be taking. So, should places like Institute of Fundraising step out above and beyond what the government are recommending? Because we're in a special circumstance. The conference I was at last week was hospice fundraisers. So they're all going back to work in hospices with people who are like really vulnerable. I've seen at IOF Digital already this morning that there was like someone from a hospital presenting. You're going to have people from shelters. You're going to have people who deal with vulnerable people all the time, and they're going to these events and then coming back into their office.
Yeah, it's weird. It's
very weird.
It is. Because I understand the thought process. It's a massive loss of income if you're refunding everything. It's a lot of uncertainty, but surely that's better than it's better than spreading the infection everywhere and hurting vulnerable people.
You would have thought so. I get it as like, you're self-employed as well, and and so how hard it is to make that decision to cut off your own money, and I have to say that with last week's event, I probably part of me knew that I shouldn't have gone, or that it should have been cancelled. But then you understand that you're being paid for this. There's an obligation to it. The event doesn't run if the speakers aren't there. And so this is what people are saying, that the government, or maybe, the organizations who are running these, they need to make the decision. Someone higher up needs to make the decision for you. It's like the pubs in Ireland, that very few of them are going to choose to close because it could be the end of them. Yep. So you kind of have to take that decision out of it and put the supports in place so they can have it. Surely.
Sure, yeah. And sorry, just going to close the window because there's road work outside my home office right now.
Are they sanitizing the streets of Oslo?
No, they're building new bike lanes. So that's going on outside my office.
That's a great Norwegian answer.
Yeah.
Making the place even better. God damn it.
Yeah, that's another thing with the... Sorry, you're lagging. I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that's another thing with what you were saying, just the government needs to take the options away. And that's... I don't know if you saw my tweet this morning about being so grateful to be Norwegian, because what they've done right here is to say that even freelancers and self-employed people will have income security. The government will cover it. So that means that I can afford to say, we're not going to do this piece of work now because it would be irresponsible for us to start it. I don't have to worry about my own, being able to put food on the table and being able to afford my mortgage. And it's just, I'm just feeling such a gratitude for living in Norway and towards the Norwegian government at the moment, and the opposition too. They've come together and figured it out. So
yeah, it's like a clear example of where things fall down, and you can see it in for example, in America, where so many people don't have healthcare, don't have sick leave, and so they're almost being forced to survive. They're being forced to go into work and spread things. So it's like, if we don't have that safety net underneath us, it's just it's impossible to manage something like this. Yeah,
absolutely. And do they not get sick leave? They will lose their jobs if they don't show up, and it's just, of course, you're going to show up. Of course you're going to show up. It's like the risk versus the definite, and so of course you're gonna take that path. It's difficult. Yeah. What have we got on LinkedIn? So Lee Woodford said he's not going. Daniel Turner said the IOF must cancel. It's so crazy. Australia is shut down, and that's less than 500 people. Less than 500 people have it. Marta Cagliani says in Italy, the only thing to do is stay at home. And Elizabeth Leclerc says, what will be the legal consequences for orgs that don't cancel and cause outbreaks? Yeah, I mean, in terms of, is there a responsibility there if we're not keeping people safe? Like, you wouldn't let the event go ahead if you knew there was like a problem with the air conditioning and everyone was going to get Legionnaire's disease. You wouldn't do it if there was a gas leak. And if you knew it and you still let it run ahead, are you liable? Well, right here you are now. A whole new set of laws was passed yesterday or this morning, where you are now legally obligated to shut things down. If you break quarantine, you'll get huge fines, or you can even end up in jail. If you're at your cabin in a different municipality to where you live, that's also now illegal. So as not to overwhelm tiny villages with tiny healthcare systems. So they're taking pretty damn drastic measures here. So to watch other people go ahead and go to a conference or go out for brunch is just surreal. Yeah,
it's like there's a whole cluster that the news hasn't hit them yet. Like they're just oblivious.
Which, in all honesty, was us on Wednesday. So
and that's it. It's like not judging. It's not judging because we were all slowly getting to terms with this, but it's like you'd think by now, they must be aware. They're acknowledging it on their website. They're pushing out guidelines on it, but then they're just maybe stopping short. Daniel Turner has pointed out, Beata, that Norway did in fact find massive oil reserves, and so that helps the situation.
The level of women in the workforce is actually worth more to Norway than the oil is. So having social structures in place is good for everyone. So that's something to think about.
So there. Aaron Clary has asked what kind of help Norway is giving financially. What else is there? Like, is it just, as a self-employed person, you're going to get monthly income? Is that how it's working for you?
So there's a couple of different things. There's some loan packages and stuff going on for the bigger businesses. They've also postponed payments of taxes from which was meant to be paid in today, which is now said to be May 1st. In addition, they've said that if you're self-employed or you're a freelancer, you're covered from day 17 of when you lost your income. So same as anyone else who loses their job, we'd now be covered, which we wouldn't have been otherwise. So that's 80% of your income that will be covered. Wow. In addition, anyone who's I don't know the English term for like when you're not fired but you're told not to go to work, you're sort of temporary fired.
Oh, I was going to say force majeure, but not. Is it like garden leave? I think we call it like garden leave.
Maybe, yeah. It's like you're told, this is shutting down for the time being, and we can't afford to pay you. So normally you'd then your employer would have to pay your salary for the first 15 days until the government takes over. Okay. That's now been put down to just the first 2 days, which is going to help a lot of businesses not go under, not having when their income falls off. Yeah. And same with sick leave, where normally your employer covers the first 2 weeks before the government takes over. That's now also 2 days. Wow. And it also covers now freelancers and self-employed who wouldn't for the first 2 weeks of sick leave. That's also now covered by the government from day 3. So they're definitely doing what they can to get that confidence in you'll be fine, which helps so much. Yeah, and we don't have the details yet.
But they're moving really quickly, and they're taking that initial anxiety out of the equation, so you can focus on some of the other things. It's pretty good.
Definitely.
Martina Green has said all pubs are closing now in Ireland. And I mean here in Ireland, it's St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, which is like our biggest tourist day, biggest day for the pubs. All pubs are closing now in Ireland. I don't understand UK strategy. All governments need to do more. I work for a non-profit, very difficult times. We are trying to support our vulnerable members, ringing them every day, amazing, and getting them supplies if needed. Events need to close.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy. What did Helen Priest said? I flashed the comment up there. I'll put it up again. I was due to be on a panel there. I believe she's talking about IOF Digital. I cancelled on Friday as I'm aware that some colleagues have health issues and others with people that are in high-risk groups. I mean, like most of our sector is dealing with vulnerable people. Why has IOF Digital not moved onto a virtual platform? You know, like a lot of events are starting to move, like Fundraising Ever, like we've been doing for ages. Why have the digital minds who are supposed to be all about digital, why are they not the ones leading this move onto digital?
I don't know.
I don't know why I'm asking you.
It's probably, again, the uncertainty, right? And just thinking we're so close to it, let's just go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the mentality, isn't it? It's like, it's so close, just one more event will be fine. Just one more thing will be fine, and then we'll do it. Yeah, and I can see that. Like the other night, I had someone one of my neighbors was having a party, and you could hear them, and it's like, fucking hell. And you know the mentality, and I get it, because you're like, well, let's just do one last thing together before we don't see each other. But it's like, it obviously goes against everything we're being told.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. Anyway, any other news over there? What do you got going on the next couple of weeks?
Well, I don't know right now. Like I have a couple of my regular clients that I'm still working with. But anything that was meant to start now, I imagine will be postponed or outright cancelled. So, for Norway now, they've said for the next 2 weeks, they're basically more or less shutting down the country. We're not on official lockdown, but we're encouraged to do the social distancing bit.
Yeah.
But then, of course, after the 2 weeks, it's really just one more week until the 2-week Easter break anyway. So I imagine we'll be basically off for the next 5 weeks. It'll be, yeah.
Yeah, you think April's going to be a write-off as well?
I think so.
And your clients, because you work with lots of different charities, what's the vibe from them? Are they feeling like they're going to take a big hit, or are they just still uncertain as well?
There's a lot of uncertainty now. I mean, there's quite a few people that have the first direct mail of the year out, like maybe last week or this week or next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll see varying degrees of impact on that. I think the closer your cause is to someone's heart, the more likely you are to not see a fall in income. And I think also, again, the swift actions taken by our government is gonna help reduce that, because it reduces the financial anxiety of people. Yeah, I'm there's just uncertainty now. Everyone's doing home office, and we don't know. I mean, another week or two and we'll know some of the impact. But I think any acquisition is going to fail pretty spectacularly if you're doing it now. If you have investments in acquisition, you should probably pull it if you can, and carry the cost until further notice. But any warm fundraising, I imagine, will be less impacted, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I saw someone put out advice of like all appeals should be stopped if they're not about the coronavirus. They should be stopped, and I don't really agree with that. But I think you're right that I think cold acquisition or bringing in new people is going to be a massive struggle at the moment, and probably not going to give you the return you need. But your warm people, I think there's that could still work for you. You know, people want to help. People see potential. People, you could still be their favorite cause. And if you're affected by coronavirus, as I would argue every charity is, then it could be the time to put out an appeal. It could sit right.
Especially if especially if it's very directly related, or if you've had to cut in services because of it. I definitely feel for, I think the Irish Cancer Society now cancelled Daffodil Day, and so here in Norway they have the big annual appeal, which is like a 2-week door-to-door collection thing. They've cancelled all the door-to-door collections, and they're trying to sort of regain that digitally. Wow. I don't know if you'll be able to do it, and it's millions and millions that's meant to go towards those cancer forms that still have very low survival rates. Massive impacts on what they'll be able to give on towards research for that.
Yeah, very true. That's sad. Daniel Turner is just commenting here, and Daniel, if you want to follow the link and come on video and tell us a little bit more about it, it'd be great. But he said his acquisition in Australia has had the best results in the last few days. Maybe there is a mindset of people wanting to help. With every problem there are helps. He says people are more aware of the need to do good, which is a great point. So I wouldn't rule out anything.
And we've definitely seen that for like the cultural sector with this uncertainty. Just in this past weekend, there's propped up a couple of like virtual venues where they help all independent musicians get a digital gig rather than the ones that they would have had to cancel, and they're encouraging people to donate to those musicians as you're watching the concert, which I see a lot of people doing. One of our local improv theatres cancelled their show this weekend, but did it as a virtual event instead, which I think they had probably like 5 times the viewership as they would have had in the room. And I don't know how much money they raised off of it, but I imagine quite a bit, because people appreciate the distraction, and they appreciate the uncertainty that now faces these performers. So they're willing to sort of give, and especially if you're not worried about your own financial situation, you can give to those now that are. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, for some people, this is a massive hardship. For others, it's an inconvenience. And actually, for some people, not a whole lot has changed. I mean, obviously it's changed, but like you and I, we work from home a lot of the time anyway. Yep. So it's not quite as big a shock to the system as it is for maybe some people. Daniel, again, Daniel's very active on LinkedIn, but he should be on video. He says face-to-face will suffer, but mail and telephone will be solid. Yeah, and I saw some reports of face-to-face fundraisers being pivoted to phone, basically just getting them all onto the phones. and it's working for people. So I mean, there's ways to adapt. You know, the things have changed, and the mix has changed, but fundraising still exists. There's still things we can be doing as fundraisers. There's positive stuff to come out of it.
Yeah,
we'll see.
There's an interesting comment in the private chat here, which says that this is an opportunity to educate our donors on why charities need to have reserves. That is for sure true.
Yeah,
this is why
Kelvin saying that. Like now in South Africa, many charities are going to have to ask some staff to stay home as they depend on public transport, which is extremely risky. Yeah. Absolutely. Kelvin, do you want to come on and say a few words? I can see Kelvin is muted and no video, so maybe he's camera shy. But yeah, I think that's it. You know, where nonprofits have been criticized for reserves in the past and having too much reserves. Now who's laughing? Yeah.
Well,
come here. Are we doing a live lobster chat tomorrow?
Yes, we are. It's going to be that's 5:30 Central European time. And I'm sure you can share the link with everyone. But tomorrow, 5:30 Central European, that's 4:30 UK Ireland time, I guess.
Possibly.
And I have no idea what it is in the US right now. With the off times, daylight saving times changing that, but
some have changed, some haven't.
We'll share the links in advance, and we'd like to talk to people about like what are they doing to keep themselves, you know, sane these days. What precautions are they taking? What consequences are they foreseeing, positive and or negative? And just entertain each other for 30 minutes or so, maybe slightly longer with all the people in the chat. Yeah,
if other people are coming on, it might be. So yeah, those of you who don't know Lobster Chat, it's me and Beata and John Lepp and Jen Love, and we chat about something around fundraising. And at the moment, obviously, it's dominated by COVID. And so, we'll be chatting tomorrow. I'll share the link. I'm going to bring Kelvin on from South Africa. Beata, you want to stick around?
I'll stick around for a bit, and then I might dash out to fetch my groceries that are showing up at any given time.
Sure. Well, don't feel any pressure. Hello, Kelvin. How's it going?
How's it, guys? Good and you?
Where are you about? You're in South Africa?
Yeah, I'm in Joburg, South Africa, and our president announced a state of emergency last night. We're still in a pretty low zone. We've got about 61 cases confirmed, but obviously our numbers are doubling every day. And our concern of working in the charity sector was obviously a lot of our community workers work in very vulnerable communities where there isn't running water, there isn't access to soap. So the community workers are at huge risk. And I think as fundraisers and communicators, it's our role to educate people of just why community workers are so important in times like this, because they're filling in a lot because we have limited resources here with government. So yeah, it's interesting times. And then obviously everyone learning to work remotely and freaking out about that. Because the benefit is no traffic, so people are not commuting. But yeah, the adjustment of people that are not set up to work from home and don't necessarily have the resources. I mean, I was out at a children's village this morning that deals with abandoned children. And I mean, their big risk of community workers and social workers coming in and possibly bringing the virus into the environment of residential care is a big risk, and just how they manage that. So yeah, it's challenging all of us globally. And as you said, it's an opportunity to think differently, challenge each other, support each other, do things differently. And as fundraisers, we've been pushed out of our comfort zone.
And is your government, have they talked about putting measures in place to kind of the relief for people with lost income, for businesses with nonprofits, anything like that?
Not at this stage. Government's not going to have the funding for that type of model. So we are talking to a couple of people now to mobilize a fundraising campaign in South Africa for corporates or foundations that want to support such a model, because especially your low-end workers that are paid hourly, government has not put a contingency in place. So if they don't arrive at work, they don't get paid. The catch-22, because also our schools will be closing from Wednesday. So all creches, all care centres, and all schools will be closed from Wednesday, which means that if you've got no one at home to look after your kid, it's a catch-22. You stay home and look after it, or do you go to work to make money? And our public transport is a big risk because we have what we call taxis, which is microbuses. That's our biggest form of transport in our country. And they really are petri dishes for infection because the hygiene is not great in those microbuses, and the government hasn't put a plan in place to do enough testing at the taxi ranks. And about 60% of the population that are commuting in and out of work still depend on that form of public transport. So lots of risks to manage, but I think it's about daily assessments and daily decisions. And this is also an opportunity for leadership to stand up and show leadership and show initiative and support their teams. So we're hoping this campaign can be launched pretty soon in South Africa, where if donors want to support such a campaign, charities that need to leverage and support staff that can't get into work, those staff are then not going to lose income.
Well, because you're a founder, aren't you? You essentially run your organization.
Yeah.
So you're as one of those leaders. What's your feeling? Because obviously, maybe like most nonprofits, you can't afford to give all these people paid time off. You can't afford to shut down while keeping it. I imagine this is a difficult time for you. Where's your head at?
Yeah, so we're fortunate that we are putting contingencies in place, and there is, the organizations I'm involved with, there's enough reserves that can carry us for a couple of weeks. And we're just playing it day by day and pray that it's not going to last for too long. So at this stage, the organizations I'm involved in, which is a number, we are encouraging staff that if they need to stay home to look after themselves, number one, and their children, number two, that must be their priority. And then obviously those that can afford to get in, great, or work remotely or work flexi time. One of the organizations I'm involved in is aged care, which is obviously a big risk as well, because your care staff that come in from the informal settlements and shanty towns here are the front line of carers for the aged population and frail cares. So we've had to dig into the reserves there to make plans to hire private transport to get the staff in and out. So obviously our costs are going up, but you know what? You've got to do what's right for your heart before the bank balance, because if you can't look after your people, then we go against about everything that we stand for in civil society, which is trying to make a difference and make the world a better place.
Yeah, excellent point. I mean, I think it sounds like you're putting people before the money, but I think, a lot of people haven't got that memo yet. And they're struggling to make the decisions.
Yeah.
What's the organization? What's your organization, Kelvin, if people want to find it?
I'm involved in a couple of organizations. I'm on the board of a couple of organizations, and that's my role. And then I do consulting at leadership level to an organization that works in feeding schemes, in what we call creches or ECDs, as well as aged care here in South Africa that's linked to one of the churches. And then I'm on the board of Charity AIDS Foundation in South Africa. And we had to put a contingency plan in place today. So, yeah, and then a couple of the clients that I help with mentoring and development of new CEOs in charity positions, that was the first call from last night. The phone went mad. A couple of clients were like, how do we handle this, the risk assessment? How do I convince my board? How do I motivate my donors? We've also said to everyone in the sector in South Africa, communicate. So sensitize your donors if you're not going to achieve your deliverables because you can't actually operate because of the coronavirus. So like one project deals specifically with schools and environmental education. And obviously the schools have been closed, so they can't do their work. So they had to write to all their donors today and say, guys, we're going to be behind on schedule because of this, but this is our contingency plan. So it's been a crazy day, but it's been fruitful in the sense of being able to put a lot of the theory we always talk about in textbooks and at conferences. We always talk about plan for the disaster.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Here it is.
A wake-up call globally, because as your colleague was saying, I think it's also an opportunity to educate society on how important civil society and charities are, and the amazing work that we do. Because we can bring us to the forefront now of what we do and use this as an opportunity to educate. you may grab a couple of new donors that are empathetic and understand and can empathize with your cause. So exciting times as fundraisers, and I think we've all just got to support each other and have these conversations, so we also don't feel isolated ourselves.
Do you feel like you're going to get a chance to slow down? You sound like a busy man. No. Is this going to force you to? No,
I think that it's in times like this, it's the pressure's good. It challenges us. I think it's I think there's just charity sector in South Africa is huge, and there's a lot of very small organizations that have got one or two people that are doing everything, and those are the guys I'm really feeling for. So we're also encouraging colleagues to reach out to the what we call community-based organizations, that are doing amazing work with one or two dedicated volunteers or staff, and just give them an ear, give them a hand, because after all, we're all one community. So in times like this, we've just got to keep going, and we can rest in 2 or 3 weeks' time when the crisis has calmed down.
Yeah, God, I actually feel calmer talking to you, Kelvin. I need to speak to you every day. Come here. This question here for the both of you. Sorry, go on, B.
No, I was just saying I'm seeing some calls to funders to unrestrict money and to know that program delivery is going to go down, but we're okay for you to spend this money on whatever you need to spend it on for the time being. So hopefully a lot of them are gonna step up to that challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's if you're a founder, a foundation or a grant-making organization, I think that's a way you can really help right now, and hopefully we're going to see them following that suggestion. Yeah. This question: charities' responsibilities to our volunteers. B, any thoughts on this? Like you said, Daffodil Day shut down because they don't want their volunteers out there making contact with people and putting themselves at risk. We are responsible for our volunteers, aren't we?
That's not just for our volunteers, that's for anyone our volunteers come in contact with either. We've got to make sure that our volunteers aren't what spreads this virus around our towns. I definitely, this also has to do with what Kelvin mentioned at the very start here, is we've got to make sure our volunteers aren't getting on buses, out of the goodness of their hearts, but still helping spread the virus around. We can't have that. We certainly have a responsibility to our volunteers, and any volunteers that are working in a health capacity. We've got to look at whether they are really essential at this moment, and if they are, we've got to do whatever we can to keep them safe. If they're not essential, we've got to make sure they stay at home.
Yeah. And as Kelvin said, you said about communication is key here. I've heard of a couple of organizations who want to put their head down and, just leave the donors alone, leave the volunteers alone because they're already going through something. But you're right. We have to talk to them, and we have to talk, give them the boundaries that we're working in, and try and just be open and transparent about it. Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I always, in my day philosophy, I always try and ask the question, why? If they can understand the why, it's not that we don't appreciate the dedication. And in a time of disaster like this, everyone wants to run in and help because we naturally do that in the sector. But if they understand the why of we're putting them at risk and their own families when they return home, and the beneficiaries, I always believe that's the way to handle it. But it's sensitive, and we've also got to channel that energy. Try and get them to do crowdfunding. Try and get them to, do something else with their energy if they want to help, because we don't want to lose them.
Donate if you can't.
Donate if you can't. If you can't give the time, give £5. Or do crowd fundraising or something. Host something. But I think that it's about keeping the volunteer engaged enough that they appreciate where you're coming from, but also having that conversation, and also start. I've seen today, I didn't do it, and kudos to the people that did. They started chain WhatsApps where, a group of 20 volunteers and a leader created a WhatsApp group so that there's, constant communication. And they had their own discussions so that the management of the charity wasn't bogged down in the small questions of the ifs and the buts. So I think it's also about working smart and having conversations with people, because everyone's uneasy at the moment. Everyone's anxious. I mean, we only got a state of emergency declared last night by our president, and the country's gone mad. The shops are literally empty.
Yeah.
People are crazy. And now from tomorrow, when schools are closed, it creates a whole different dynamic. So it's about, back to that fundraising 101, have the conversation, understand your donor, understand your volunteer.
Mm.
And I think also be generous. If you're a charity that has the reserves and the regular donors and whatever it takes to get through this, don't be out there pushing the message that you need the money. Just rather be generous and actually direct your donors and volunteers to support someone else who might really need it at this time. I think that generosity goes a really long way in increasing your donors, increasing yourself in your donors' esteem as well. Don't use the opportunity to fundraise unless you really need it. Don't look around for an angle to make this salient for you, the charity, unless you really need to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You
trying to be generous.
We're not fundraising for the sake of fundraising, but if you're financially affected by this, and you probably are, but if you're financially affected by this, be open and transparent about it. And there's still helpers out there. There's still donors out there.
Simon, I think the big challenge is it's more than one country. It's not a global catastrophe where it's a tsunami somewhere, or it's a earthquake somewhere, or it's a terrorism attack in one city. I mean, this is affecting the world. And that also is compounding it, because every fundraiser around the world is feeling like, oh my God, how do I handle this? And it's my job to make sure the doors stay open, And that's where also we've got to challenge leadership. So the fundraisers also need to challenge their leadership team and say, guys, I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling pressurized. I need help. And because of that, I think it's going to compound it, because it's every country's, even if they haven't got coronavirus yet, which is very few, is facing the same thing. And every charity is saying, what if? So also lessons learned. Once we're through this, guys, make sure your emergency and disaster recovery plans are in place specifically from a fundraising perspective. We should have everything in the bottom drawer waiting when these things happen. We all talk about it, and then we get caught. So I think it's a great opportunity when it's quiet now, that people are in isolation, working from home, to really do some deep diving and some deep thinking, and have those deep conversations and develop those documents, so that no matter what disaster hits your charity, you're ready.
Yeah. Laura Crowdaker on LinkedIn has said, could volunteer fundraisers go digital and be given ideas of things they could do to raise awareness and funds where possible? I guess it's an opportunity to upskill volunteers and help them learn new skills if they're interested. I've had people over the weekend asking me to teach them how to use Canva, etc., to make images to share more widely. I think that lines up with what you guys are saying as well. It's like, it doesn't stop, it just changes, and we have to support people within that change. Why are you both moving your camera? It's like, I thought I was falling off my chair.
Try to look up and not down.
It's so warm in my guest room because I had to close the window because of the construction work. Now they appear to be done, so I opened it back up.
Okay, lovely. All right, I'm gonna move on. I have a couple of housekeeping things to do before I wrap up, and then I have stuff to do. Beata, we'll see you tomorrow for the live lobster chat. So me and you will be back chatting, and people are welcome to join for that as well. Kelvin, where do people find you if they want to follow you or if they want to know more about you? You're a social media guy?
Social media at Kelvin Glenn, KelvinGlen for Twitter. LinkedIn, search Kelvin Glenn as well. And I'm very active on social media.
Nice one. All right. Thanks a million, guys. I'll talk to you again. Look after yourselves. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, what else did I have to say? So we're going to start to wrap up. Some really interesting comments. Laura Crowdaker has followed up as well. I also see this as a time for collaboration between charities and how they come together to share resources if needed. Will we see more mergers of orgs who are able to combine talent, resource, tools, services? Yeah, and I've seen some really lovely stuff of people coming out, offering free services, free consultancy. saw people like just names pop into my mind, like Wayne Murray was offering free help. Liz Leclerc was talking about she was going to donate the money she saved on her travel and on her, eating out at lunchtimes and things like that. So there's people, I see lots of people in my timeline helping out. And there's a big community forming in Ireland of people who are offering their services or offering to go pick up stuff if people are in self-isolation and things like that. So it's a scary time, and there's lots of negative shit. But people are still helping, and people are still there. Mark Hullabaloo1 has said, when will the food run out in the supermarkets? And I mean, the food did run out and then they restocked it. So it's not that like all the supply chains are obliterated. It's just capacity, isn't it? And so we need to be kind of realistic. We need to be calm with what we're consuming and what we're doing. Not panic, but we just need to, we need to just be sensible about all this. All right. So if anyone has any other thoughts, then please do come out. Daniel Turner said we have two separate issues. Do you know what? Look at this. My doctor is ringing because I'm trying to get an appointment before. Can I just put you on hold? Hello?
Hello, is this time?
Yes, it is.
Sweet Lord, my Lord, my Lord, I really want to see you, really want to be with you, really want to see you, Lord, but it takes so long, my Lord, my sweet Lord. My Lord, my Lord, I really want to know you, really want to go with you, really want to show you love, but it won't take long, my sweet Lord, my sweet Lord, really want to see you, really want to see you, really want to see you, Lord.
Okay, so sorry about that. Yes, absolutely. I need to get some ads there, don't I? So you're right. But yeah, that was my doctor who I've been trying to get through to, and so I had to take the call. She seems to think I don't need to be tested, even though I was in England surrounded by a few people, because I don't really have any symptoms. And so there you go. So live on air, you found that my doctor thinks I don't have coronavirus. So that's good. Now, before we wrap up, there's a few things that I just want to flag with you in terms of what's coming up, or what might be useful to you. So at Fundraising Everywhere, we are doing a number of free networking and social events coming up. If you have a look at fundraisingeverywhere.com/networking, then you'll see stuff that's coming up, see if there's anything you want to do. There's a few chats like this that we're doing that you're welcome to come in or just observe. We're doing some just text chats, we're doing karaoke, we're doing some other things. So if you do feel stranded, if you do feel isolated from other fundraisers, if you do want to keep networking and working on your personal development, there is going to be stuff happening all through fundraisingeverywhere.com. I will continue to be streaming stuff on my social media and everything like that. So if anyone has any suggestions or wants to come in and chat, then please do. We're going to keep reviewing the news. We're going to keep an eye on what's happening with this stuff and with everything else in the sector. Other suggestions in terms of what you might read up on now. I saw Chris Bayless has done a good post on canceling events, and what you do in terms of postponing, what you do in terms of sponsorship refunds. So any charities, and I know a lot of charities are going to be affected by this, if you're delaying or canceling events and worried about sponsorship, I would have a read of Chris Bayless's post on LinkedIn, and he's shared it on other social media. He's a smart guy and he's got some good stuff up there. I also recommend Madeline Sugden's blog. So Madeline Sugden, I believe she's a UK fundraiser, but she's collating a whole bunch of responses by nonprofits about the coronavirus, some other resources out there. She's putting it all in one place, and it's really useful. It's really helpful. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend going to Madeline Sugden and checking out her stuff, because that's useful. Mark Hullabaloo is massively unhelpful by asking if I see the troops being deployed. I don't know what country you're in, but in Ireland, we're not going to be deploying the troops. What else is there? NCVO have some good resources out there and some good advice in it. IOF, they have some advice out there. I would take any advice from any UK organization with a fucking pinch of salt at the moment, because they don't seem to know what they're doing. But there's lots out there. So we'll keep talking. I'll be back probably tomorrow and we'll have some more stuff to talk about. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for my guests who came on. Lovely to see you all, and we will chat again soon. Thanks a minute.